Hi guys, it's me again, here to talk about our language arts choice for our homeschool. We're doing a series on what we use and how we use it, and we wanted to show you guys what we've decided for our family and why we like it and maybe why you might like it for your homeschool. The cool thing about homeschooling is that you can tailor make the education for your child. It takes some research on your part. You may have to kind of figure out the needs of your child and what method, what education kind of mindset you have or your educational theory, and then from then on you choose what you like. I've mentioned before that we are a classical family. Classical in most cases, and other things were a little bit eclectic, but classical in that we like the trivium. And we have read this great book, and I bring this up all the time, called The Well-Trained Mind. I think this is a read for all parents, even those who may not be thinking about homeschooling. It just breaks down what education or the classical education is like. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, I'm going to make another video on how we understand classical education and how we employ it at home in these modern times. So when we decided to do grammar with our children, we decided to stick with Susan Wise Bauer's curriculum. We like the way she broke down her grammar and pairing it with classical education, and so which is a grammar heavy approach to it. It's important. The mastery of language and the mastery of the grammar of the language that you speak is really important in classical education, and thus we decided we're just going to stick with her curriculum, which I found to be really great. Her language arts curriculum is called the First Language Lessons for the Well-Trained Mind. This is actually the second edition. My first edition is on loan, which is something really neat that, they make their curriculum so that there's no writing in this book. Well, I kind of write in it, but you don't have to write in it. So you can reuse it with each upcoming child. You're not buying something new for each child. We made this as a family purchase. And I was able to lend it to a friend who has a child who's this age or the age of that first level. And when she's finished it with it, she'll hand it back to me and I'll use it for my youngest child. So it's another perk that these things, that they're non-perishable, as we would say. No, you can use them again. They're reusable. So this is a copy of the level 2. And we did this about second grade, first and second grade. We did this with my girl, and what's neat about it is that each one of them is broken down. It's a little tough to see. It's broken down with the lessons, and the subject is pretty simple, learning nouns. And so, or in this one, it was a noun review. And so what's neat about it is it tells you, almost scripted, what a teacher should say, what a student should say, what kind of reply you're looking for. A lot of it is just sitting down next to your child and walking them through the parts of speech and things like that, and then hearing their response back. And there are some activities that you can do, but mostly the only other additional thing you could use for the first 2 levels of language lessons is writing paper. Sometimes index cards, but writing paper should usually suffice. So it's one of those curriculums where you don't need a lot of extra fluff. It really is very repetitive. It reviews a lot of the material just to ensure that your child gets a firm grasp and a mastery of grammar and the initial parts of speech before they move on to higher levels and constructing sentences and then writing paragraphs and then writing dissertations. So we like language lessons for that reason. It keeps it very simple, but it is thorough and it is repetitive, which is important when you're trying to master these concepts. So this is level 2, and again, levels 1 and 2 do not require anything much outside of this book. Now, when we moved on to level 3 with language lessons, my daughter's moving into 4th grade and getting into more writing, more complex reading and things like that. So when we moved on to level 3 is actually not just the parent workbook like the other one was. This is the parent workbook for level 3. You can see it's a lot thicker than the other one. And part of that is because in this level we start diagramming sentences and things like that, things that I didn't get to do in elementary school. But this one requires diagramming sentences, really breaking the sentences apart, knowing the parts of speech, knowing the parts of a sentence and things like that. So this one includes a parent notebook. This is level 3, and a student workbook. So for the student workbook, what's neat about it is everything that they need to write is already laid out for them. And so you don't have, in this one, I just make her write the date on the subject that she's doing, and we just keep this as kind of the record of her progress through it. So she can always go back and look, or she can go ahead and see, but everything's already in here for you. And I particularly, again, I've mentioned it in other videos, it's not that I'm lazy, I just want to be really efficient with my time as a homeschooler. We didn't homeschool to add to just add complication to our lives. We actually homeschool because we felt like it would bring ease and a grace, and actually make education just a part of our everyday life. And so I like curriculums that keep it very simple but are effective. And I believe this is one of those, my top curriculums, that is simple but super, super effective. When I go over some of the things that she's grasped from here, one of the things that Language Lessons does is that it jumps to poetry memorization or art appreciation. So they'll show us a classical piece of art, a painting or a sculpture, and then we get to talk about those things and talk about the history of it and things like that, as a nice little break from just learning about grammar. But what's neat about that is I can go and talk to my daughter now, who's in the 4th grade, and she still remembers some of the poems that we had memorized. And we didn't memorize them just all in one day, but just little by little we kept adding a couple lines, a couple stanzas, and she's able to recite poetry, and I made her stand up and recite poetry. And I think the well-rounded nature of how we learn language and how we approach language and how we approach the written word is something I like about Language Lessons. So if you're looking for a language curriculum, and especially if you maybe do classical conversations or something similar to that, just a classical education at home, Language Lessons is a real I found to be a real good anchor in grammar before you move on to more complex things. I think if your children are lean towards being writers and things like that, it's great to give them a firm foundation in language. And we found the first Language Lessons for the Well-Trained Mind to be a really good curriculum for that. Again, we love sharing what we use with you, and we appreciate you listening. I hope this has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, make sure to post them under in your comments, and I'll get right to you. All right, thank you so much for listening. Hey fellow homeschoolers, if you enjoyed this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. Also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at To Teach Her Own.